Let us say you studied very hard in your class 12th and you scored excellent marks. But instead of taking up your class 12th marks, your parents decided to look into class 11th marks. That's not justified, right? You have worked a lot and the results have shown that. And something similar has been happening with India's growth story. Because when we were measuring India's today's and tomorrow, we were having it with yesterday's yardstick. We were forgetting about OTT, UPI, digital economy and whatnot. So when MOSPI came up with a decision to revise not just base year, CPI, IIP every 3 to 5 years, it is not just a technical change, it is redefining the way that how India will be seen in terms of its growth story and how its growth story is going to be more accurate and more reflective. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to talk about this important decision that has been taken up, that there will be proper revision of not just base year but also CPI and IIP based on that, so as to ensure that the growth numbers in front of us are not only accurate but also reflective. So let us try to understand this from scratch. So when we are talking about this particular revision that has been talked about in terms of base year, which is important not just for consumer price index but also GDP and industrial output that we see through IIP, we have seen that the revision will be done every 3 to 5 years, so as to ensure that we do not have a obsolete or a stale yardstick to measure the changing performance of our country. Now, to understand these terms and what exactly the government is trying to do, we have to break down these concepts. So let us start with that. Starting with understanding that what exactly is base year and why is it important. So when I am talking about base year, it is nothing but a reference year. Now you will ask me how. So let's just say if we want to compare how much India has grown in this particular year, then that comparison needs another year. That can be last year, that can be 5 years back, that can be 10 years back. But if every year is differentiating, if every year it is changing, let's take the example of agricultural output. So let's just say if we had a monsoon boom, then if we are comparing with that, then obviously the output of this year will seem less. If we are comparing with a year where the agricultural output because of extremely fragile monsoon was very less, then the output of this year will seem way too much. So we don't want that. We want a realistic comparison. So we will choose a year which was stable, which showed the real numbers, and then we can compare this year with that. So that reference year is basically the base year which we use to compare the economic data, economic numbers over time. And why do we keep a base year, or why do we use this reference year? We do that so as to ensure that whatever are the changes in economic data, be it inflation, be it the gross domestic product and also industrial growth, that can be understood realistically. Now, if the base year or the reference year that we are talking about remains the same, that means it will keep becoming very old. For example, up and until now, we had the base year as 2011-12. In that context, many of such problems emerge, such as consumption patterns are not recorded properly. For example, if you look back 2011-12, I don't remember you guys paying for subscription fees, be it for Netflix, be it for Amazon Prime or educational portals as well. But now you do. If you talk about 2011-12, household expenditure, especially in terms of groceries, that dominated the expenditure. Digital economy was not high up, but that consumption pattern has changed. So we need the base year to change. New industries have come up. When we are talking about renewable energy, when we are talking about AI, when we are talking about orange economy, that is creator economy, that were not present, they have emerged now. They also need to be calculated. And there will be multiple sectors which have gradually phased out. They are declining. They also need to be minimized in their proportion. So if we are not changing base year, we are not inculcating all of these changes. So if we have an outdated base year, in that context, we will have misleading economic data, be it in terms of inflation or growth numbers. So that is why it is very important to switch and revise the base year. Now we have understood one particular concept. Now moving to the next one which has been talked about, that is CPI. Now when we are talking about CPI, that is Consumer Price Index, it is used to measure inflation. Now when we are talking about inflation, what exactly is inflation? Inflation is basically how much more money you have to give for the same commodity over the duration of change of time. Let us take an example. Do you remember back in time, I don't know if you were present there, Maggi used to come at rupees 10. Same packet of Maggi is rupees 15 now. It might be costlier in some regions. What is this? This is inflation. This is an example that the same quantity you have to spend more to buy it. And when we are talking about Consumer Price Index, that is CPI, it is used to measure retail inflation. That means how much change is there in terms of prices of goods and services which are consumed by households. So CPI shows us exactly this. Now how CPI is calculated? For CPI, we take a basket of items which will include goods and services. Each item will be given a weight that how much spend, based on how much spending share goes to it. Let's just say if we are talking about groceries, they will have a higher spending share, so they will be given more weight. And the prices are then compared with the base year. So if we are talking about prices of this year, then we will be comparing them to the prices of base year, and that is how we will get the Consumer Price Index. Now moving to another concept that has been talked about here, that now when we are talking about CPI itself, what has been the change that has been made here is the fact that as of now we have not just talked about changing the base years for CPI. With the change of base year this time from 2011-12 to 2022-23, we are seeing that the basket has expanded from 299 items to 358 items. That means there is better exclusion which shows the real change. And what new things have been included? Rural house rent has been included, airline tickets, OTT platforms and e-commerce prices have also been included, and there has been a better focus on services as well as modern consumption, so as to understand that what is exactly changing across the economy. Now on this note, we will be moving to another component related to CPI itself, that is understanding why the revision of CPI was necessary based on inclusion of more items. So if we are talking about structural changes, if you look at urban food, earlier share it had only 43%. Now it has been reduced to 39.7%. Rural food 53%. It has been reduced to 47%. Why this has happened? Because we see not only income levels rising, we are also seeing that there is a shift from food to services. I am not saying that we are discarding food. We have to take an example here. Let's just say you earn rupees 100. Every month you were spending rupees 50 on food. But now you have started earning rupees 150. So even if you are going to spend not 50, 60 rupees on food, and rather your expenditure, rest of the money is going to online services and other things, in that context the proportion is reducing because income levels are increasing. So that is why we get to see the structural changes which are happening. They need to be recorded, and that is why CPI revision is very important. And at the same time, we have not just seen increase in income, we have also seen growth of digital platforms, increase in housing and transport expenses of individuals. So when we are talking about old CPI basket, which was based on 2011-12 data, that did not reflect the new India and their changing expenses, and that is why we have to revise and again we would have to revise it every 3 to 5 years to keep capturing the real India and the growth numbers around it. Now, the first thing that was talked was base year, CPI, then we talked about GDP. Now, let us move to GDP. When we are talking about GDP, we need to understand that how base year affects GDP calculation. When we are talking about GDP, what exactly it is? It tells us the total amount of goods and services which are produced in the domestic territory in a given financial year. Now, when we are looking at this GDP, it is of two types. First, we have nominal GDP, which shows total value of goods and services produced at current prices. So, let's just say the total number of goods are produced 100, the current prices are 10, it will be equivalent to 1000. But when we are talking about real GDP, then it is adjusted using base year prices. That means the current prices have inflation component present in them. When we adjust that and when we look at that, that's when we adjust that and when we look at them, that's when we will be able to see that what is the real number after adjustment of inflation. So, in this context, we need to have inflation numbers, we need to know CPI, we need to have a base year for that, so as to understand that what is our real GDP in this context. So, for that very reason, if the base year is outdated, fast growing sectors, be it IT, be it digital services, they will not be valued appropriately and they wouldn't be included. Declining sectors will be overrepresented and the growth that we are talking, that will be distorted. So, when we are talking about the government deciding to revise this every 5 years, this will show us realistic growth numbers. Now, we have understood why base year revision is important, how CPI is associated with base year, GDP is associated with base year. Now, let us move to understand that when we are talking about industrial output, and that is measured through Index of Industrial Production, that is IIP, why it is that IIP base revision is also important. So, when we are talking about Index of Industrial Production, we get to see the short-term industrial output, especially in sectors like mining, manufacturing and electricity. All the components in the industries which are included in IIP are very important from the perspective of exam as well. There has been a direct question in prelims already. So, can you tell me in the comment section which are the industries which are directly reflected and which has the highest weightage in IIP? Now, when we are talking about understanding the industrial output here, it is very important to see that what kind of industries are increasing and what kind of industries are decreasing as well. So, when we are talking about revision of IIP also, we just want to capture this picture. Which are the new industries and which are the old industries which are declining, and we need to adjust their weights accordingly. So, that revision also is important, because if we will not have accurate industrial output, we will not be able to understand that what is the industrial momentum, the policy making will not be accordingly, and the national growth will also suffer. In order to address all these aspects, the changes have been brought in. So, this has been announced by Ministry of Statistics and Planning Implementation that India will revise base year of CPI, IIP and also GDP. The revision cycle for CPI and IIP will be every 3 years, and for GDP it will be every 5 years. The most recent change that has been made is of the base year from 2011-12 to 2022-23. And the whole objective behind it is to make economic data more responsive, especially to the structural changes which are happening in the economy. So, the next revision that will happen, that will be based on Household Consumption Expenditure Survey of 2023-24, and that will be put out accordingly. But when I am talking about these changes, the reason I have explained them in so much detail is the fact that they hold extreme significance. They are not just technical changes, they are the ones which will ensure better monetary policy. When we talk about RBI targeting 4% inflation, then that can be only understood if we know what is the inflation rate. We will know inflation rate through accurate CPI. If we have accurate CPI, then RBI will choose better interest rate decisions. When we are talking about inflation increasing, we have to control the expenditure and demand, because if the demand keeps rising and it is not met with supply, then obviously the prices will shoot up again. So, we want to limit the money in the economy. What we will do? We will increase the interest rates on loans. We will give more interests for keeping your deposits. That means people will have lesser money in their hand. They will spend less, they will demand less, and inflation will be controlled. So, that decision of interest rate, that will be taken by RBI through Monetary Policy Committee, and that needs to be accurate, and that will be accurate through accurate CPI. If we want government to do better planning, that will only be assured with proper growth numbers. If government does not have correct GDP, they will not be able to plan their tax calculations, their deficit calculations, where they want to spend, where they want to gain from, what they want to tax. Then we need the correct GDP numbers. If the numbers are real, the investors will show more confidence in our economy. If the numbers are here and there and they are inflated or undervalued, then the investors will think the economy is not solid. So this will not only facilitate transparent data, this will also bring us with global best practices. And because of all this, the welfare implications are also there. When we are talking about DA, pensions, MG-Narega wages, all of them are associated with CPI, Consumer Price Index. So if we have correct inflation numbers, that means correct and accurate CPI, you will see fair compensation as well. Now, when we are talking about broader implications of such a change, it is very important to look at that we have to constantly reflect on structural transformation that is happening in India, capture the real picture, be it increased digital economy, we have to enhance the statistical credibility, and we have to align with global standards. This will be happening through this, but there will be challenges. Challenges will be the short-term changes that we have to make in inflation numbers, which will be already cropping up because we are revising the base year. There will be a lot of political chaos as well because of growth revisions, which might change the growth estimates as well. And at the same time, there will be a lot of vulnerability and also volatility in the markets because this will mark the period of transition. So when we are talking about way forward, this step in itself is a way forward. But to ensure that this way forward is more consolidated, we need to address all these challenges. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.